This is Cultivated live from Planet 13 in Las Vegas. I am Jay Rosenthal. You are Krista. You are Jeremy. And you are Brytany Melville. And we're going to talk about all the work you do. But we are here live, Planet 13 in Las Vegas. We are midway through our second day here at Planet 13. Brytany, tell us what Forte Operations is and why it's important for especially cannabis dispensary operators.
Well, first off, team, thanks for having me. Really appreciate it, and nice to see some familiar Canadian faces.
They let us in.
No kidding. I got interrogated.
Oh, really?
Apart my whole bag, yes. And I had oil of oregano of Shabaz's, and they thought it was weed, so that delayed me another half an hour.
You literally had oregano?
Yes, oil of oregano.
Oh,
yeah,
oil of
and they
oregano.
thought it was weed.
But don't they know that helps you not get a cold?
Apparently not.
Okay.
Americans. Just kidding.
Easy.
So Forte Operations. Essentially, we are a team of retail strategists that have been opening and operating dispensaries across North America. Our team's been doing it for about 5.5 years. So anybody who is a new licensee and, at the early stages, never opened a store before, that there's a ton of decisions to be made. There's a ton of money that you need to spend, partners that you need to vet. So we essentially support people in accelerated boot camp that gives them one-on-one consulting anywhere from customer journey, product planning, marketing planning, people planning, compliance, custom SOPs, your training. So you can take our boot camp at any cadence you prefer, depending on the state of your business. And throughout this entire process, we really help build and customize all of your tools, resources, and set you up for opening success and ultimately withstand market saturation. Krista, I'm sure you've seen this also, but so many stores have just rushed to open and all go in the back of house or open binders, and the place is running rogue. You can tell they're hemorrhaging money from every orifice, and maybe it looks on the books that they're making good numbers right now. However, they're bleeding, and our goal at Forte is to really take that time, front load their time, set them up for success so that they have a repeatable business model and they can go and focus on store 2 and store 3 and know that every single operational nuance is completely standard, set up for success. I always say retail is detail, so making sure that all of your SOPs are in place, your team members are trained, everybody speaks the same language, and that you're set up for operational excellence.
Talk a little bit about, this is the question Jeremy usually asks, but talk about a little about your background before Forte, because it is obviously relevant.
Great question.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I learned from the best. Talk a little bit about sort of your background that brought you to today.
Yeah. Well, I was living in Indonesia. I was living in Bali for a couple of years. I started a business out there in my early 20s, and I've been in retail my whole professional career. And cannabis, as you know, in Canada, legalized federally 5 years ago in October. So I had the opportunity to open the first store in Canada, which was Tokyo Smoke in Winnipeg, Manitoba. Thought I'd be doing that for 6 months, and I'd move back to the islands, but fell in love with...
So you moved from... Hold on. Can we just go...
Yeah.
Can we just talk about that, the transition from Indonesia to... Is it rural Manitoba?
Not rural.
Okay.
But Winnipeg, Manitoba.
Okay, I didn't
Rural enough.
I didn't mean that was not a
Sorry
slight to
to
anybody.
Manitobans,
I didn't know if it was Winnipeg. Sorry.
Yeah. So, anyways, so we came and opened the first couple Tokyo Smokes there. And then I fell in love with the space, the challenge, jumped ship and started my own consulting agency where we support independent retailers. I saw the big box shops receiving beneficial treatments in terms of data deals, cheaper accessory prices, obviously having, an abundance of stores across the country, you're going to get a lot of advantages that mom and pop shops wouldn't get. So I started an agency to support independent retailers, opened the largest store in Canada, and opened Drake and Forte's store, helped them launch their brand, and then most recently been spending a lot of time in the US supporting independent retailers get first to market and set them up for success.
So if I'm taking your boot camp, I want to open a dispensary. What am I doing and what am I learning?
So again, it's completely customizable to wherever you are in your journey. Let's say you haven't even signed a lease yet.
Yeah, just starting.
That is the most ideal spot for us to come in, because I've come into projects where people have signed 6,000 square foot leases, and they've called their hardware and software providers, and they're like, gear me up with 30 iPads. I'm going to have all these cash registers. And at that point, it's almost too late. Like, aside from this store, there aren't very many stores that can have that large of a footprint and be successful long-term with market saturation. So our ideal spot to start is right after you've received your license, or if you're in the early processes of, or just about to receive your license, and we can kind of customize the sessions to however you feel fit. So customer journey and like store planning is usually within the first. Financial planning we typically go through, so you can help budget the rest of your project. People planning would probably be next. Partner planning, we walk through and support you in vetting all of your partners, because licensees do have people trying to sell them things every day, saying you need $4,000 SEO optimization, you need this text messaging campaign, although it's illegal over here, you need this loyalty program, even though we can't do that in this state. So I'm here to be like, now save the money, spend it here, let's layer that on maybe 6 months down the road once we've secured everything, and move at a strategic space that is going to be successful for you. Yeah.
The first conversation we had today is with someone who's about to open in 6 weeks.
Cool.
And he was talking, I think he was talking about everything he's learned up to now, like up to day one, right? He's learned to be a real estate developer in many ways, like construction manager. He's been a public affairs expert. He's been an advocate. Yeah. He's hiring people. Like, it's a lot to get to day one. Like, and I think some people say, well, you're close to the finish line. That's amazing. And he said, no, that's both the finish line in one sense, but it's also it's the starting line. And I think that is a unique challenge in cannabis, is that so much is put on getting to day one, that day two, which is the day you're open, is like hard.
Yeah.
And how do you, having seen it from both sides, like people about to open, but also having open shops yourself, like what are the surprises people see, like first day, week, month, that they just blows their mind?
You know what I've seen so often is their network isn't set up securely.
Oh.
Curate. Their network isn't set up, and if it is a busy store and your bandwidth can't handle that level of traffic, sometimes tills go down. If you have everything on Bluetooth and nothing's hardwired, you don't have backup plans, and if a busy store, the cash goes down for half an hour, sometimes that's like 20 grand in a jump, a big busy jump. So that's probably number one. And number two, if it's an early market where you don't have a lot of people that have been working in cannabis dispensaries before, it's a huge learning curve. I've been in retail my entire professional career, 17 years, and this is unlike any retail. It's very challenging. You're dealing with a plant that changes all the time. It yields different. You're not getting the same clothing coming in every season at the same price. So navigating that on top of regulations, compliance, inventory, it is challenging.
Yeah, it is. People find that out pretty quickly.
Definitely.
And then what are some of the, not big pivots, but what are some of the big changes retailers make from their like best laid plans before they opened to then? Like, is it like, okay, we can only really have 2 registers open all the time because of these things, because we can't afford the more people to staff that? Like, is it a people issue? Is it an operations issue? Is it an inventory issue? Is it regulatory?
So you said, what are the biggest changes people make?
Yeah.
Positive changes, mature and entrepreneurial licensees make are ways to bring in additional sources of revenue through pop-ups, brand deals, shelf pay-to-play events coming to play. So there are other avenues of revenue stream you can bring in as an experienced, motivated operator, because we all know the margins in this space are razor thin. So you kind of have to get creative in that sense. So in a positive note, I've seen so many successful operators pivot into a couple different businesses, selling data, scraping data, and really use their experience in their store to their benefit that way, as a catalyst into so many other ventures.
Yeah. And when you're here, talking to people
Yeah.
here, but also on the trade show floor. Like, what is your sense? You've been in the industry a long time.
Yeah.
A long time, like we all have, even though we're all so young. How could we be in an industry for a long time? Like, what is different now from talking to people who are in an industry now that's a little bit more mature than it was, say, 2-3 years ago, where people were, not also everybody was gung ho, like this was going to be the biggest thing ever. I think it's a much more realistic expectation now of what the industry is like. Like, are you seeing that same thing when you're talking to both your clients, but also just general conversation?
It's a good question. In terms of industry maturity, in certain states, or obviously in Canada, there is. However, I'll walk into a state like New York, for example, that's in its infant stages, and they are making the exact same mistakes we made 5 years ago. And I have to hold everything inside of me to not just jump on till and jump in there and help and support and correct these people, because come take a walk in Toronto dispensaries or walk down Queen Street, and you will get a ton of valuable insights into how to start your business, because we made the mistakes 5 years ago. You'll see stores have closed because they spent $500,000 on their renovations. They thought they were going to have this grandiose art piece in here that was going to drive traffic to their one lonely store, when ultimately that money could have gone into expanding to location number 2. So I don't know if I answered your question there or pivoted onto another, but...
Well, I was going to say you can walk through Queen West and
Yeah.
sometimes in the
Somebody
future
learning?
you can still see inside some of those stores if you put your arm like this right through the
Exactly.
closed sign.
Exactly.
But
Like a museum.
yeah, it's like an archive of closed stores. But that is, and I often think about this, like, is that the best path for new markets, to like let as many stores open as possible, open and fail as quickly as possible? Because that we saw in Ontario, like that is the fastest and best way to like launch a market, give people like lots of access to brick and mortar retail. And otherwise it's slow. And otherwise the unregulated market just grows and grows and grows every day that you prolong, legal dispensaries on every corner.
I've spent time in both markets where there are open markets with no mandatory distance in between the stores, and unfortunately the mom and pop shops that have spent all of their life savings into putting it into a dispensary that's been their dream because they've been growing weed for the last 20 years, they'll have a large MSO come maybe even right beside them, and as we call it in Canada, the Horton hug them out. So like Tim Hortons, they'll come right next door to a nice family-owned cafe. They can drive their margins down and push them out. So
It's called a Horton's Hug.
Yeah, it's called the Horton Hug. Dave Cote.
Oh,
It's a great term.
but he was on the hugging side of it. He worked at Tim Hortons, right? He worked for Tim Hortons.
Yeah, so it is tough in that sense in an open market. And although people can open quickly, although sometimes regulators get a bottleneck there, it is tough for the independents, because you will get MSOs come in and be able to operate at a much lower price point, which ultimately will drive you out of business.
Amazing. Brytany, I want to thank
Yeah.
you for taking time and sharing your expertise and being a good Canadian fighting the fight out there. I like that a lot. I also like that you don't spend winters in Winnipeg anymore, so that's you're gonna spend it somewhere else a little bit warmer. So thank you so much for joining us here today at Planet 13 for Cultivated Live, and we'll obviously connect with you probably on the flight back as well. But thank you for your time, and we're going to be right back from Planet 13 Cultivated Live. We have one of two guests coming up because I see them both. Diana Eberlein from the Cannabis Beverage Association and Source, or David Schweedy, who I also see from Heritage Cannabis. We'll be right back with one of those two people momentarily. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.